Hello everyone, welcome back to Amazon. I'm currently inside the Amazon S3 service. To get here, just click on Services and type in S3. It'll bring you to this lovely page here. So what is Amazon S3? Well, Amazon S3 is Amazon's storage solution. It uses something called buckets to hold your data in. Your data is referred to as objects. A bucket is basically a container within S3 that is used for storing objects. Um, and just to understand that, both buckets and objects are classed as resources, which are referred to with an Amazon resource name or something you will see denoted as an ARN. You can upload as many objects as you like into a bucket, and I believe the soft limit on buckets within your account is 100 buckets, but you can ask Amazon to increase that if you so need to. Um, What else about buckets? So buckets need to be created within a region, and S3 has a universal namespace. Now, a universal namespace basically means that once you create a bucket, very like the main name, that name is unique to your bucket, and nobody else in the universe can use that name. So, for example, if you try to type in test bucket, you will be told to choose something different. And no matter how many times you try to type that in, you will not be able to create a test bucket because someone else will already have that name because it's extremely popular. Okay, so in order to create a bucket, you just click Create Bucket. Let's call this my tutorial bucket. And this probably is already taken, so I'm going to call it a thing. Jing. Not even sure if that makes sense, but we're going to call our bucket this anyway because we want it to be unique. Buckets are specific to a region, so once you identify the region you want your bucket in, data will not leave that region unless you explicitly make a decision to move it using something called cross-region replication. Other than that, your data within your bucket, so your objects within your bucket will remain within the region that you select on creation. You can copy settings from existing buckets if you have existing buckets. I do not have any existing buckets here, so I'm just going to click Next. Now, versioning. Versioning is very important in terms of if you have objects in your bucket that have a high integrity and you want to make sure that somebody doesn't mistakenly delete those objects, you should enable versioning, as this will allow you to recover objects if they are deleted. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to do this. Again, if you have a requirement to log request access to your bucket, you should turn on server access logging. For tags, if you have tags, maybe you want to call this classification and private. If you have a company naming policy around how you tag and classify data, you may want to associate classification tags or other tags with your buckets. Default encryption, so you can encrypt your objects by default. This will encrypt your objects using AES 256 if you want to do that. And again, for management, you can enable CloudWatch. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to leave these blank because some of these will come with a cost, and we're trying to keep costs down here. But if it is a company, please follow your company policies and procedures, and I would recommend that you definitely encrypt data if it is in any way sensitive. So as you see on this page, block public access. So by default, Amazon S3 buckets are not public. The reason they are not public is because the minute you turn this off, you get a big warning saying Amazon recommends you block public access to your bucket unless public access is required for specific and verified use cases, such as a static website host. And then you need to acknowledge that because a lot of the breaches around data in the past few years have been around misconfiguration of S3 buckets, making those buckets public, and then someone comes along and robs all of your data. So you do not want to do that. Okay. So we just click next. It's summarized our configuration settings at the moment. So I'm just going to click create bucket, and that will create my bucket if that name exists, and it does. So my tutorial bucket thingamajig, nobody else thought of naming a bucket like that for some reason. So voila, I have a bucket. So excellent. So if I click into my bucket, then what does it tell me? What are the options? So it's empty. There is no objects in here at the moment, and it's important to know that buckets are flat in terms of their file structure. So there's no directories, but you can imitate a directory by creating folders. For example, I go test. I can save that folder, and then within that folder I can nest another folder and so forth, or I could just upload files directly to this folder. Okay, if you want to replicate some kind of a directory type file structure. Okay, so in terms of properties, as you can see, there are a number of properties. They're all disabled at the moment. Versioning, keep multiple versions of your object. This is important if your object is of high integrity and you don't want someone to delete it and be unable to retrieve that information. I recommend you turn versioning on. Server access login, again, it may be a security requirement if you want to see what requests are coming in out of your bucket. If you were hosting a static website, you would enable this option. If you wanted to see what objects, record the object level API activity using CloudTrail, you would turn this one on, and default encryption would enable AES 256 to encrypt the objects within your bucket. As you can see, then there are more advanced options. I'm not going to go into these at the moment. If we look at permissions, your core permission is to block public access. As you can see, this is on. I have blocked public access to this bucket. You can go more granular with access controls. You can add accounts. You can put a custom bucket policy or a cross-origin resource sharing configuration in as well. In terms of the management, you can configure life cycles. So what happens to your data? Do you want data to remove after a certain time period, etc.? You can set up replication, so cross-region replication, or same-region replication for increased durability of your data. As I specified earlier, your data will remain in the region it was set up in unless you enable cross-region replication and explicitly move your data elsewhere. I suppose in terms of regulation and GDPR or data type regulations, if you're within the European Union, when you use this, you will want to make sure that if it's personally identifiable data or protected health or anything along those lines, that you make sure that you keep the regions within the countries that abide by those laws. Okay, so access points. I'm not going to go into access points right now. So that's kind of a rough detail on how to create a bucket. You can create folders, and you can nest folders in each other to imitate a directory structure, but it is important to understand that S3 is flat. In terms of what you're charged for in S3, so what items do you actually get billed for? You get billed for a number of things. You get billed for storage, you get billed for requests, you get billed for data transfer out of S3, you get billed for transfer acceleration, you get billed for some management functions such as monitoring metrics, S3 inventory, and storage class and object tagging. So that is just a quick summary of what you get charged for in S3. In terms of S3, it's also good to note that S3 standard is what we're in at the moment. It has a durability of 11 nines, so that's 99.99999999999% durability and 99.99% availability. So it's extremely stable. And I think that kind of brings me to the end of my explanation of S3. S3 is quite a core part of the Amazon cloud service. You can go into much further detail, but for an introduction, I think that's enough, and that's all you need to know to get a bit of hands-on, start playing around. You can upload files, set permissions, and just play around and see how you get on. It'll give you a good hands-on understanding of this service. Okay, thank you.